Let's dive right into this explainer and explore a seriously fascinating journey. We're going from the bizarre biological reality of physical sleep all the way to the metaphorical sleep of societal conditioning. Today, we're looking at human consciousness from two completely different angles. We'll start with some Western philosophical observations on the deeply strange phenomenon of literally falling asleep, and then we're going to pivot to a really provocative Eastern mystic's perspective on waking up from what he calls a cultural trance. It's an amazing contrast, and it challenges a really basic assumption. Just how awake are we actually? Picture this. Imagine I came up to you and told you I had this bizarre neurological disease. For 8 hours, every single day, I completely lose control of my body. I disconnect entirely from the outside world. And I suffer from these vivid, wild hallucinations, like, say, being chased by a grizzly bear through a busy railway station. You'd probably think I needed serious medical help, right? Well, the philosopher Raymond Tallis uses this exact humorous thought experiment to point out a massive blind spot we all share. Because literally everyone sleeps, we just completely accept this daily blackout and loss of control as totally normal. We entirely ignore just how utterly weird the phenomenon of sleep truly is. So here's our roadmap for the explainer. We're going to cover the strangeness of sleep, why philosophers fear it, the concept of the sleepwalking society, confronting power structures, the rebellion of joy, and finally, the Enlightened Awakening. Section 1. The strangeness of sleep. A universal blackout we completely take for granted. You would think science has a definitive answer for why we do this, but they really don't. Despite theories ranging from conserving energy and promoting growth to staying safely immobilized in the dark or consolidating our memories, none of these ideas are entirely bulletproof. Actually, William Dement, who was a pioneering researcher and co-discovered REM sleep, concluded after 50 years of studying this stuff that the only genuinely rock-solid reason we need to sleep is, well, simply that we get sleepy. It's a pretty amazing admission of just how mysterious our own biology really is. Moving to Section 2. Why philosophers fear sleep, the terrifying loss of the waking self. While scientists are just puzzled by sleep, existentialist thinkers actually feared it. This anxiety is beautifully captured in a historical clash between Descartes and Locke. Descartes viewed the mind as this continuous, unbroken substance. To him, if we stopped thinking, we would literally cease to exist as an I. He was so terrified by this potential gap in consciousness that he insisted we absolutely never stop thinking, even in our deepest sleep. We just don't happen to remember it. John Locke, on the other hand, totally dismissed this. He argued that empirical evidence clearly shows we don't think when we're out cold, famously noting that every drowsy nod shakes the Cartesian doctrine right to its core. And that brings us to a really brilliant concept from the French poet and thinker Paul Valéry. He was obsessed with that weird transition from sleep to wakefulness. He wrote about a character, Monsieur Test, who dedicated his entire life to maintaining an uninterrupted consciousness, striving to kill the puppet, meaning the biological automaton inside himself. This deep fear of acting mindlessly, of just being a puppet to our biology, is the perfect bridge for us to move from literal physical sleep to the metaphorical sleep of human behavior. Which leads us directly into Section 3, the sleepwalking society, trapped in a cultural trance. So here is our big thematic pivot. If physical rest is just a biological necessity, what about the metaphorical sleep we experience while our eyes are wide open? The teachings of the Eastern mystic Osho argue that humanity is essentially sleepwalking through life, trapped in a cultural trance. A key symptom of this, according to the source, is pervasive sadness. But Osho views sadness not as a natural state, but as inverted anger. Think of a child who wants to hit his parents in a moment of rage, but can't because he's small and dependent. So he represses that anger, and it turns inward into sadness. Later on, that child might walk outside and kick a dog, transforming the sadness back into displaced anger. The discourse claims this exact cycle of repressed frustration is what maintains our societal trance and totally prevents any authentic change. Section 4. Confronting the power structures. Who actually benefits from the dream? If the masses are walking around in a trance of misery, we have to ask who profits from it. The discourse points the finger directly at two main pillars of authority: priests and politicians. The text claims religious leaders control the masses by postponing salvation to the afterlife, basically teaching people that current poverty and misery are just spiritual tests. This breeds a passive acceptance of suffering. Politicians, meanwhile, are described as relying on massive conflicts and wars to cement themselves as historical heroes. And this, the source argues, actively diverts public attention away from solving actual pressing global crises. Now, the source text goes on to make some highly controversial claims regarding these institutions, which we are just impartially unpacking here. The discourse asserts that the unnatural religious enforcement of celibacy, along with the historical isolation of monks and nuns in monasteries, are the direct root causes of homosexuality, and subsequently nature's revenge in the form of the AIDS epidemic. We are presenting this exactly as the speaker stated it in the source material, illustrating his intense, unyielding belief that societal and religious repression leads directly to profound human suffering and disease. The speaker also provides a really intense personal narrative to back up his claims that political power structures actively crush anyone trying to wake people up. He recounts his imprisonment in the United States, characterizing it as a fascist effort to silence his message. He alleges a rapid cascade of events, being arrested without a warrant, secretly shuttled through 5 different jails in just 12 days, being forced into a pressured guilty plea that resulted in a $400,000 fine, and he even claims authorities planted a bomb in his waiting room. He uses this entire narrative to argue that the system will quite literally go to any length to maintain the status quo. So, what is the way out? That brings us to Section 5, the rebellion of joy. Waking up through celebration. The text doesn't just dwell on the darkness, it proposes a solution. And it's not a violent revolution, but a radical, unapologetic rebellion of joy. It completely redefines the concept of sannyas, or spiritual seeking. The old way of seeking enlightenment was all about painful renunciation, torturing the body, sleeping on beds of thorns, rejecting the physical world. The new paradigm completely flips this on its head. The new sannyas is defined as rejoicing in the world naturally, engaging with life, comfort, and love with absolute totality. The argument here is that existence isn't some sadist wanting you to suffer, it actively wants you to bloom. Section 6, the Enlightened Awakening, the path of the non-serious meditator. If we reject the old dogmas and the solemn misery of society, what does true enlightenment look like? The core philosophy states, quite literally, seriousness is sickness, playfulness is needed. Unlike traditional religious approaches that demand solemnity and long, tragic faces, this philosophy argues that the universe itself simply isn't serious. Birds aren't serious, trees aren't serious. Only humans invented this heavy, burdensome seriousness. To truly wake up, you have to abandon that weight and approach life with the innocent playfulness of a child. To summarize this path to becoming what the text calls a non-serious meditator, we can break it down into 3 clear steps. Step 1. Drop the ego and the heavy seriousness that society constantly praises. Step 2. Actively reject the historical glorification of suffering. Poverty and misery are absolutely not spiritual badges of honor. And Step 3. Embrace cheerfulness. Becoming a walking, breathing example of joy, especially in a world that profits from your misery, is presented as the ultimate act of rebellion. We've covered some wild ground in this explainer today, haven't we? From the literal biological mystery of why our brains just shut off at night, to the deeply provocative idea that we might still be asleep even when our eyes are wide open. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Are you truly awake, making conscious choices filled with joy? Or are you just sleepwalking through a societal script written by someone else? It's a fascinating question. I hope this gave you the tools to explore it further. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.